This video was recorded as a part of a live webinar series from Aberdeen Consulting. Please note that some of the features shown in this video may have changed and or have been updated since this was recorded.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started today. Like I said before, welcome to the Microsoft Teams VoIP webinar. Again, just wanted to share our information here on the left-hand side. Obviously, we have our address along with our phone number. Wanted to introduce the other individuals that are going to be on today's webinar with me. So Jim Blair, he's going to be helping in the background with the Q&A, answering your questions. Myself, Kyle Harritz, will be doing most of the presentation today, along with Kyle Weed, who is also participating in the presentation. He's on the technical side and will also be available for the Q&A at the end. I also want to mention some upcoming events. We've been doing these webinars since about March. We did take a break for a little bit to get some more content created. So along with this webinar that we're doing today, we'll also be doing another one on Office 365 updates on December 17th at 12. Again, some of the things that you're going to learn about is what's new with Office 365, what's on the feature and license benefits, new licensing options, and enhanced security offerings. And you can go out to our website, aberdeen.com/events, to get signed up for that. All right, like I said before, we are going to have a Q&A section. It's going to be on the side of this presentation. So if you want to go ahead and ask some questions, we will be answering them, like I said, throughout the event, and some of the more advanced ones we will touch on at the end of the presentation. Hopping right into the agenda here, some of the items that we're going to cover today. What is VoIP? Microsoft's VoIP history, Teams VoIP features, Teams VoIP demo. This is something that we do have some pre-recorded content to try and help out with some of the technical hiccups that can happen. So it might seem a little odd that you hear somebody else besides myself, but that is actually Kyle Weed, and you will hear him later on in this presentation. So we'll be reviewing the desktop application along with the mobile app. Hardware options, because there are many options that you have with Microsoft Teams. From a VoIP standpoint, we will touch on all three of those. Licensing as well. Migration path. If this is something that you guys are looking to do, how would you go about doing it? We'll touch on that. And then some training options. Microsoft, just like with all their products, has a bunch of great training options, including videos, not only for the VoIP section of Teams. Again, VoIP is probably the newest feature of it, and the one that everyone is looking at, but all the other items as well. So let's hop into this. So what is VoIP? Before we get going, we want to understand exactly what that is. So what does VoIP stand for? VoIP, which stands for Voice over Internet Protocol, is a technology that allows you to make voice calls using a broadband internet connection instead of a regular analog phone line. The story of VoIP begins close to 100 years ago at Bell Laboratories, named, of course, for Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone. Throughout the years, the technology has been refined to where there is over 1 billion daily users on a variety of VoIP solutions. This next graphic just kind of shows you how a VoIP call would be placed. So you have the end user there. They make the call. It goes through their internal network, goes out to the internet, and then would eventually get to 365, where it'd be handed off to the next carrier to place that call. So I wanted to talk about some history with specifically Microsoft and their VoIP solutions. So you've probably heard of it in the past. Skype for Business was the original VoIP solution from Microsoft, but back in July of 2019, Microsoft actually announced that Skype for Business would be going away and Microsoft Teams would be its replacement. Now, Teams has been around a little bit before then. Microsoft Teams was actually announced at an event in New York and Microsoft launched that service worldwide on March 14th, 2017. It was actually created during an internal hackathon at the company headquarters. So like I said, there's a lot of features with Microsoft Teams, but Microsoft Teams extends the capabilities of Skype for Business, bringing together chat, meetings, calling, collaboration, app integration, and file storage into one interface. So let's talk about some stats in regards to Microsoft Teams. So this is something obviously that we're all dealing with, but on March 2019, 2020, Microsoft announced that Microsoft Teams had hit 44 million daily users in part due to COVID-19. After that, Microsoft reported that by April of 2020, Teams had hit 75 million daily users. And on a single day in April, it logged 4.1 billion meeting minutes. As of November 2020, current estimates say there are over 120 million daily users. Hence, for the uptick in people wanting to know more about the VoIP option that it has. Like I said, it is something that originally wasn't a part of that, but once Skype for Business was announced that it was going end of life and Microsoft made the change, that is their new solution going forward. So, features of Teams VoIP. So Teams VoIP offers many of the features you would expect from a traditional VoIP solution, from call routing to device management. Teams allows you to create audio attendants to route incoming calls through an automated menu system to a desired destination. In conjunction with auto attendants, call queues allow you to route calls to groups of users in a variety of methods that include round robin, which balances the incoming calls per agent, so each person in the group gets the same number of calls. Another option that you would have with the traditional phone system is serial routing, which rings each user one by one, starting with the agent at the top of the queue each time. And then there's attendant routing, which will ring each user in the group at the same time each time the group is rang. So we wanted to touch on these features, and I'll get into a little bit more, but the reason why is, people ask, if it's through Microsoft and 365, is it still going to have the same capabilities as I would expect from a traditional VoIP solution? And the answer is yes. There aren't many things that Microsoft Teams VoIP can't do that a traditional phone system can do. And the other thing I will point out here is that they're constantly adding more features. But to get back into some of the features that they currently have today, one of them is built-in device management. So when you sign into a Microsoft certified Teams of Phone, those devices automatically get added in a Teams admin center, where you can apply configuration policies, schedule firmware updates, and view information about devices such as the model, whether it's online, offline, and who last signed in. So again, from a administrative standpoint, that's a nice feature to obviously have when you're talking about a phone system. Another big feature that it includes is the ability to interact with Teams VoIP from anywhere that you have an internet connection. You can answer phone calls and join meetings from the web app, desktop app, mobile app, and hardware or handset phones. And when you have a Teams VoIP app installed on your mobile device, you don't need to give out your personal number, as Teams calls will come through on your device in a similar way to a normal call with its own ringtone and that. And again, we will be going over that demo as well, so you can see the differences between the desktop app and also the mobile app. Another thing that I wanted to mention is you can also integrate VoIP with third-party contact center that can perform call routing tasks for you. So again, if you use some automated third parties for calling, that's something that you can also incorporate into this as well. So as I mentioned, Microsoft is constantly improving the service by adding new features quarterly and improving the already existing features regularly. One of the things that I did want to mention is number allocation. When you would move over to Teams VoIP as your new solution, they do allocate numbers a little bit differently. It's something that the number of phone numbers is equal to the total number of domestic calling plans or domestic and international calling plans. Those are licenses that we'll talk about towards the bottom. But basically what Microsoft has is a formula that allows additional numbers to be assigned, and it's based on the current numbers of users. So the link that I have, or the couple links that I have here, would take you out to those current 35 features. And like I mentioned, they're constantly updating Teams VoIP. And again, I think that's one of the big things that separates it from your traditional VoIP solution is that if it doesn't have that feature today, there's a good chance that I'll have it tomorrow. And that's what the Teams roadmap is about. So on that link, if you were to go out to that, you're able to actually see what's coming down the pipe in regards to not only the VoIP section, but also just Teams app in general. Again, like I said, Teams is probably the most robust app for Office 365. So it's very powerful, and the VoIP piece has added even more to that. So we're going to get into the demo at this point. Like I mentioned, we did do some pre-recorded stuff for this. So I just wanted to point that out again, and let's hop into it.
Okay, let's start with locating the Teams app. You will need to sign into your Microsoft account on the web. Once you do, you might see a page that looks like this. If you don't see the Teams app listed, you can type Teams in the search box on the top of the page, or click All Apps. Click to open the Teams app. If you still don't see the Teams app listed, contact your IT department.
All right, so that slide was just showing you how to easily locate the Teams application. The next one that we're going to go over is the Teams web app.
This is an example of what the Teams app looks like on the web. To easily download the desktop app, click on your initials or picture in the top right of the window and select Download the desktop app or Download the mobile app. The Teams desktop app is available for both Windows and Mac, and you can also download the Teams app on your mobile devices from the App Store.
All right, so that was, like I said, a little brief overview of the Teams web app. The next thing that we're going to hop into is what the desktop app looks like. So one thing that I will point out is you can see that throughout, whether it is the web app or the desktop app, the view and feel across all those looks very similar, and that is by design. Microsoft continues to make it try to have as much parity as possible, whether you're using the web browser, which you can certainly do, the desktop app, or like I mentioned before, the mobile app itself.
This is an example of the Windows desktop app. Microsoft is working on designing all of their apps to look and function the same across all platforms: desktop, web, Windows, iOS, Android, and Mac.
So again, just reiterating what I said before, that is something that they're trying to do to the best of their abilities, and so far they're doing a pretty good job with that. So the next thing that we're going to jump into is Teams navigation.
Okay, now that we've located the Teams app, let's take a look around. For this session, I will be using Teams on a Windows desktop. Let's start with the left navigation. This contains all of the different features available to you within Teams, i.e. chat, calendar, Teams, and call-in. Today we'll be going over the calls section.
All right, next thing up in the call section is speed dials.
Okay, let's move on to the contacts portion. If you want to create a speed dial, Teams has made that pretty simple for you. Just navigate back to calls in the left pane, then click on the speed dial option. From there, you can see there's an Add Speed Dial button on the right-hand side of the window. Click Add Speed Dial and enter the name of a person within your organization or the phone number of someone from outside the organization.
The next item that we'll hop into is the contact groups.
Within the Speed Dial window, you will see different groups sections. You can see that I have favorites, my group, and other contacts. These are essentially organizational containers to keep your contacts organized. You can also create your own groups as you see fit.
Next item from the contact groups will be just general contacts.
The contacts section on the left is a more generic bin for adding all of your internal and external contacts, as opposed to the speed dial section, which is generally reserved for a more limited number of specified contacts. You can add more contacts by clicking the Add Contact button on the right side of the window, then typing the name of someone within your organization or an external phone number. That will add them to your list inside the contacts area.
All right, so now that we've talked about contacts and speed dials, let's hop into looking at some call history.
The history section is where you will find information about your call history, such as who the call was with, whether it was incoming, outgoing, or you missed the call, the duration of the call, and the time and date that the call took place. If you click on the ellipses to the right of any call, you have a few options there, such as call back, chat if the contact has Teams, and adding them to your speed dials directly from call history.
So that gives you a overview of the call history, and the next section we will be taking a look at is voicemail and how to check that.
The voicemail section is where you will see a log of your voicemails. Who called, the duration of the call, the date and time the voicemail was left, and if you click into any voicemail, you'll get a transcription of that voicemail message.
All right, so we have covered the online / desktop version of the Teams VoIP. So the next thing that we want to do is get into the mobile app. So we're going to go over launching that along with pretty much the same things that we covered in those last few slides, but with the mobile version. All right. This section of the webinar is dedicated to the Teams mobile app. So let's go ahead and get started. First, what we need to do is launch the Teams application. So I'll go ahead and select that. As you can see, once launched, it brings you right into the calls portion of the mobile Teams application. The other thing you'll notice is right away it shows your history. So you can see that these are all the calls that I've placed or missed or have received. The next option we have is voicemail. Go ahead and select that. You can see at this time I don't have any voicemails available, but that would be the option there to select it. The next thing we can do is hit the magnifying glass. Here we can search for contacts inside of Teams. As you can see, I previously searched for James, Jim, and Jake, so let's go ahead and try somebody else. Let's go ahead and select Phil. All right. So at this stage, we have a few options that we can do. You have the ability to message him utilizing the message icon on the left-hand side. Next to that, you have the squiggly or heartbeat icon, which is to denote any Teams activity. You have the ability to do a video call or a standard Teams call. And an additional option is actually to select Phil's email in email. But I don't want to do that. What I would like to do is back out of here and go all the way back to the beginning and select Down at the bottom right, you can see the icon with the phone and the plus in the purple circle. We're going to go ahead and select that to place a call outside of our organization. So right away you get brought into the dial pad. So here you can place your call outside of the organization, and I will do that in just a second. But let's go ahead and select people. So again, just like the search before, we can go ahead and type in somebody here, and we'll go ahead and use Phil again. We would be able to contact Phil via Teams or also through his personal phone there. You can see it there. Let's go back to the dial pad, and I'm going to just go ahead and call myself. Now again, this is just using the Teams app. This is not using the onboard calling app. So I went ahead and did it, and I can see that I'm getting a call for my Teams number. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and answer that. And then you can see that it comes up as a traditional phone call. So let's go ahead and end this. All right, so that walks you through the operation on how to place a call, searching for contacts, pretty much everything that you would need to do inside of the mobile app. So for this example, I have an Android phone. It would be pretty much the same experience on a iOS device if you are a iPhone user. Again, the other thing is this still requires that you have a internet connection, right? You're not going to be able to communicate with anybody without that. So this can either go via Wi-Fi or it can go through your cell provider. So again, I just wanted to point that out. And as we touched on previously, when you dial out of Teams to a organization, to them it's going to appear like you're calling right from your office. It's all going to come in the same way, and vice versa when that stuff gets when you receive a call, as I showed in the video, you'll see that as well come in. So we'll go ahead and move on to some Teams certified hardware.
There's also a variety of Microsoft certified hardware that includes desk phones, conference phones, and headsets. The phones all run a proprietary version of Android firmware and work with multi-factor authentication if that is enabled for your tenancy.
So what I wanted to point out here in this slide, obviously we have the headsets. So Teams has their own certified hardware line. They're constantly adding. Again, vendors are submitting, different pieces, whether it's, like I pointed out, headsets or desktop phones or conference phones to get Teams certified. So when we first started doing this, you didn't have as many options that were Teams certified. Now there's a lot more vendors. So when it comes to headsets, you have your Sonys, your Jabras, Bose, all your major players have Teams certified hardware. And same with the desk phones. So, you got Yealink, Poly, some of your bigger players when it comes to that. And again, with the same conference room phones. So again, all those players are continuing to submit new product to be certified. One of the things that I just wanted to mention though about the headsets is obviously you can use a wireless one or a wired one. As long as you're able to use that headset, at least with a Windows environment, it works there. You probably have a good chance that will also work with Teams. We haven't come across any USB headsets that work on, let's say, your PC, but don't work in Teams. So I just wanted to point that out as well. So the next thing we'll talk about is licensing.
Now let's go over the licensing options available for Teams VoIP. You start with a base plan such as Business Basic or Enterprise E3, for example. Then add the voice options as add-on licenses. The add-on licenses you need for voice will depend on which base plan you start with, as some base plans include certain voice add-ons already. Here's an overview of the add-on licenses you will need for full voice functionality with Teams. Phone system. This license is required to enable the hosted VoIP features within the Microsoft tenancy. This includes voicemail, caller ID, auto attendance, call queues, and more. Calling plan. If you want users to be able to call phone numbers outside of your organization, you will need a calling plan license. You have the option of either domestic calling plans or domestic and international calling plans. Audio conferencing. Sometimes people in your organization will need to use a phone to call into a Teams meeting instead of their computer. Setting up audio conferencing for users who schedule or lead meetings adds a phone number to the Teams meetings that they create for people inside or outside of the organization to have the option to call into if they can't use the Teams app for whatever reason, or even if they don't have Teams at all. Business Voice is a cost-effective bundle for adding voice features and is available to anyone with a 365 business base plan that includes Teams. For example, Business Basic, Business Standard, or Business Premium. It includes in the bundle the phone system, audio conferencing, and domestic calling plan licenses.
All right, so we touched on obviously the different packages in regards to licensing. Now, with that being said, it does depend on what you currently have in for 365 licensing. There are different packages that suit, obviously the different ones that are displayed here. So you have your base plan, and then obviously your voice calling, and which ones would be associated with that. So that's something that would either be determined, if you're going to do a complete uplift, if you don't have 365 at all, or if you currently have some flavor of that, obviously we would match the appropriate license to you at that time. All right, so since we're talking about that, now's a good time to segue into, actually a migration to Teams and really what that would look like. So the first thing that we got to do is collect, that important info, like I mentioned before, about licensing and what you currently have. There's other things that we have to do as well. And, every organization has their own way of starting this procedure. But we really like to start is with the discovery process, where we collect as much information about your current phone system as possible. For example, numbers being ported, call routing, greetings, schedule, and then also hardware. Those are things that we want to get, right away. And with that, then we can start to form, our project and obviously our proposal. So for the deployment process, licenses, and hardware that will be needed, again, because of Teams, it has the ability to work from not only your computer, but your mobile device. So some organizations that we've actually migrated elect not to have a desktop phone. They just don't need it. They think they're more efficient without it. Some people don't like giving up the real estate on their desk, but it's something that again, you have that option to do it. And then we have people that are more traditional and they like to have that phone at their side. The next thing is obviously the porting. So if you currently have a phone service provider or carrier and already have phone numbers, we will need to create that port process. This is a process of getting your current numbers from your carrier over to Microsoft. Currently, because there's a high volume of people requesting to migrate, the amount of time needed to make a transition is around 90 days. Again, like I mentioned before, people have been working on Teams since March, and it's exploded, based on the ability to collaborate, and then adding this piece to it. People are able to work remotely, and they want to continue to do that. So adding this piece is just a natural fit, and hence the extended waits on that. But that's something that when we go into this process, we know that there will still be some communication between ourselves, Microsoft and your current carrier during that time, making sure that we have all of our ducks in a row before we go to the next item, which is your go live date. So during the port order process, we'll be given a time where your numbers will be switched between your current carrier and Microsoft. This is what we call, like I said, the go live. On this date, we will be on site to help with any loose ends and make sure everything, making sure everyone's able to obviously place calls and that they're configured properly. If there's any issues between obviously your current carrier and Microsoft with that porting process, we're going to be there to facilitate any of those items there. Traditionally, this is something that we'd look to schedule like first thing in the morning, and that way we're done usually before noon. It's a pretty quick process for that, and then like I said, we have time in there built in to help people get set up as well. So that gives you a pretty good idea of the actual migration process over to Teams. The next thing I wanted to mention is some training options. So Microsoft Teams resources. So Microsoft does a great job with giving you as much information as they can. And probably one of the best when it comes to Microsoft Teams in general is their interactive demo. So the interactive demo is a guided tour of Teams, the application itself, and not only the desktop version, but also the mobile experience. So basically, if you go out to that link, you can select either of those experiences and walk through that process just right on your through your browser. So again, just another thing, if you're kind of on the fence about this and you might want a little bit more than what we demoed, you have that option as well to walk through Microsoft's. The Microsoft Teams Help Center, it's really just an overview of the product itself. Again, just more high level. Another thing that I want to point out is the Teams training videos. So this is, besides the interactive demo, this is probably the other big thing that we push people towards, and it's really something where you get that almost that hand holding with these videos. They do a really good job of walking you through the process and showing kind of like what we did today on the screen of where things are and what features you might want to take advantage of. Well, sorry. The last portion here, Microsoft Teams meeting rooms. So, we talked about mainly the VoIP portion of this, but Microsoft Teams also has the ability to do, video conferencing. This link here takes you out to the Microsoft Teams certified meeting room. So as we mentioned about the hardware previously, the headsets, the handsets, and the conference room phones, they actually have meeting rooms that have certified cameras, certified microphones, tablets for running the meeting, and they go through all the way from like a personal meeting space, like if it's just you in a small room, all the way up to your large, conference spaces. So that's definitely something. If you thought, hey, this might, be an option, it definitely is, and that will give you some great information about that. Wrapping up, again, just wanted to share our information. If you do have any questions after this and want to get in contact with us, you have Jim's email, my email there, along with Kyle Weed. Upcoming events, again, just want to remind you about that. Office 365 update, that's going to be December 17th. All right, so with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close out today. Thank you very much for your time, and you have a good rest of your day. Thank you.